What's up, everybody? This is Jimmy Chang, and I'd like to welcome you back to another episode of Me on My Onewheel. Before we go on, I want to thank everyone for their support and their kind words in the comments, and I also like to thank everyone that has subscribed to my channel. We recently reached a landmark 550 subscribers in just a few short months, and so thank you. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. It's free. It's right there. Just click that button. In today's episode, we are going to talk about winter riding on our Onewheel. Before we get into that, I want to talk a little bit about some of the comments you guys made from my last video where I taught my mom how to ride a Onewheel. Apparently, I was teaching her incorrectly how to figure out which foot is her dominant foot, and a lot of you guys said you should use the ice method where you imagine or you find some ice and you go slide on it, and the foot you put out in front first, that's your dominant foot. Well, here I am on some thin ice, but I decided not to go out on it. It didn't look very safe. And so I decided to continue my one-wheel journey. Today I am one-wheeling in Lakewood, Colorado at Belmar Park, and this lake here is called Kunze Lake. And so I was accompanying my wife as she attended her eye appointment, and I figured while I was waiting, I might as well get some one-wheeling in. And that's the beauty of the Onewheel. It's in my trunk. I just pulled it out, and I was able to go and explore. So as you may know, Future Motion recently released some tips on winter riding, and I wanted to go over those. Here's one of them. Have a ton of fun. Winter riding is a blast. Yes, winter riding can be a lot of fun. Onewheels do work in the cold, but there are a few things you need to consider. Number one, because it is so cold, depending on where you live, it could be very cold, or it could be very warm. Quick shout out to my friends and family in Maui. I'm sure the weather there is no different than it was when I was there just a few months ago. But I am not in Maui anymore, and I am here in Colorado. The thing about riding the Onewheel in very cold temperatures is, unlike running or even riding a bicycle, or snowboarding or skiing for that matter, your heart rate I don't think goes up as high as it does with some of those other sports. And so when you're on your Onewheel, you can get pretty darn cold, and that's because you get something called the Windchill Factor, the Windchill Index, and that's the equation there. And if you plug that in, and I just did a little rough math here, if I'm going around 10 miles an hour on average, and the temperature is 29 degrees, the wind chill actually makes it feel more like 20 degrees. And so how do you protect yourself from that? Well, each year I take some Boy Scouts camping in the snow in the month of February up in the mountains. And it gets pretty darn cold. I think last year it dropped down to 17 degrees while we were sleeping in our tents. Well, I always tell the boys there's no such thing as bad weather, but there is such thing as bad gear. And that's just to kind of hammer down the idea that we need to be prepared. You know, a scout is prepared. And in this case, a one-wheeler should be prepared too. So when you go one-wheeling, make sure to wear layers. Layers help to keep you warm. You can take off layers if you get too hot. You can add them back on when you get too cold. The other thing you have to consider too is when you are on the Onewheel, you tend to not use as many muscle groups. Your heart rate, I don't think it goes up as high, at least mine doesn't, as compared to when you are running or doing another sport like skiing or snowboarding. And because of that, you can get cold really quickly. For me, my hands get really cold, and so I think wearing a nice pair of gloves, finding some gloves that are thin enough that can fit under my wrist guards, but are still thick enough that can keep my hands warm, that was important for me, because my hands do tend to get very cold when I'm riding in cold temperatures. Other things to think about: wearing a scarf or some sort of balaclava to protect your face, and then even your helmet. If you want to upgrade your helmet from a skater type helmet to a ski or snowboard type helmet, that'll add some protection and padding for your ears to keep your ears warm. The next tip given by Future Motion is ice is slippery and snow is wet. You know, this is common sense, but I do like it because it helps to dispel a myth that has been perpetuating on a lot of the Onewheel Facebook groups or Onewheel discussion boards, and that is the myth that the Onewheel is waterproof. No, the Onewheel is not waterproof, it is water resistant, and just like the tip there from Future Motion says, electronics and water are not good friends. So let's try to keep the board as dry as possible. I know there are ways to modify your board, such as the Badger modification, but if you haven't done anything to waterproof your board, a stock board out of the box, straight from the factory, is not waterproof. The next tip that Future Motion gives us is to bring it inside. So don't leave it in the trunk of your car, don't leave it outside in extreme cold or extreme hot for that matter, because your battery, the electronics, it does not like to be exposed to extreme temperatures. And so bring it inside. The battery doesn't like the cold. If it gets too cold, it's not going to work very well. When you ride in very cold temperatures, you may see a battery drain. You may see that your range is not as far as it normally is during ideal temperatures. So take that into account. That's another tip. When you're riding in cold temperatures, account for the extra battery drain that may happen in cold temperatures. The next tip from Future Motion is on how to store your Onewheel for long-term storage. And this is actually very helpful because it hasn't really been clear how to store your Onewheel for long periods of time. I've seen some people post in discussion boards saying that you should always leave it plugged in even when you're not riding it for long periods of time. I've seen other people saying you need to drain the battery to a certain amount. Well, Future Motion gives us pretty specific instructions. They say to make sure to charge your battery to 40 to 50% and store it in a dry place between 50 degrees and 60 degrees, and to check monthly to ensure your battery remains between 40 to 50%. And so this is kind of battery hygiene for lithium-ion batteries. It's known that you shouldn't have a fully charged battery stored and packed away, and that's just the chemistry of the battery. If you have a fully charged battery and you don't use it for a while, that's going to degrade the life of the battery. And so they recommend draining it to 40 to 50%. And then they say to keep it somewhere cool, 50 degrees to 60 degrees. So that could be a problem. My wife would kill me if I kept the thermostat at 50 to 60 degrees. I guess down in the basement in some storage, you can look there for a place. But I think if you keep it in room temperature, 70 degrees should be fine. But they recommend 50 to 60 degrees. Those are the winter tips that Future Motion recently sent out. I think they're actually pretty informative, and they help to dispel some myths that have been perpetuating. I would just like to add one more thing to that, and that is during the winter the days are shorter, and because they are shorter you may find yourself riding in the dark or in low light conditions. If that's the case, then you need to be prepared for that. So what I like to do is I have a reflective vest that I like to wear. It makes me very visible to oncoming traffic. I also like to carry a small flashlight with me. It only uses one AA battery, which is super handy, and it's pretty darn powerful. It's nice, it's small, it's compact. I love the strobe light function that I use to shine down at my feet, and that helps to get motorists' attention so that they are aware that I'm there. So now I'd like to read some of my favorite comments from my previous video, the one where I teach my mom, a grandma, how to ride a Onewheel. And I've got to start off with this comment here from the folks at Future Motion themselves. And they say, "What an awesome lady. You are a great teacher, Jimmy." You know, that really makes me feel good that Onewheel is taking the time to watch my videos, and they took the time to write that comment. So thank you guys. Here's one by Jorge. Your mom's new moniker is Sly Dog Granny. Great job. I love it. And so that's a good one. Even though my mom has no idea who Sly Dog Stroh is, she is now the Sly Dog Granny. Here, Bill writes, your mom is funny. I like her. Gutsy too. Very well done. Thank you, Bill. Yes, my mom thinks she's very funny. This one's from another Bill, and he writes, my mom rode my one wheel too. She's 63. I think that's fantastic. And let's get them together. Maybe they can have a senior citizen float session. I think that'd be great. Next we have Eric, who writes, your grandma's great. However, why did you let her dominant foot in the back? Dominant foot should be in the front of the one wheel. And so that leads me to my next question. How do you guys figure out which foot is dominant when the ice is too thin and you have nothing to slide on? And where do you put your dominant foot, in the front or in the back? I'd love to hear from you. Please tell me how you do it in the comments below. As always, thanks for watching.